And good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are continuing our summation, overview, and to a certain extent, recapitulation of our extensive study of the Olivet Discourse. For the last 3 or 4 videos, we've been focused on Matthew chapter 24 and verse 36. Because it is considered the pivot point. It's considered the continental divide of the Olivet Discourse, as one famous Church of Christ minister called it. And what I mean by that is, it is assumed and widely argued, this is Kenneth Gentry's position, that in Matthew chapter 24, when Jesus predicted the fall of Jerusalem and the temple, the apostles were immediately confused. They were shocked. They didn't know what to think. And so they very ignorantly linked Christ's coming at the end of the Christian age with that fall of Jerusalem. Well, as I've shared with you over and over again, that position demands that the apostles believed in the end of the Christian age, which had not even been discussed. Period. The closest you can come to it is back in Matthew chapter 16, 18, when Jesus asked the apostles, "Tell me, whom do people say that I, the Son of Man, am?" And Peter said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus responded, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this unto you, but my Father which is in heaven. And verily I say unto you, thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." Okay, there's the establishment of the church. But we're supposed to believe, you see, that from Matthew 16 to Matthew chapter 24, Jesus had introduced the subject of the end of time. No, Matthew 16:27 doesn't talk about it at all, but I won't have time to discuss that right here. So, once again, the entire argument, as I said yesterday, the entire argument about Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, changing the subject from the fall of Jerusalem to the end of time, is based upon the mistaken, the wrong, the misguided view that the apostles were asking about a literal, visible, bodily, physical coming of Christ at the end of the Christian age, which is not a biblical doctrine. So that concept, that mistaken concept of the coming of the Lord, is then imposed on Matthew chapter 24, verse 3. And then we come to Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, and the commentators say, "Oh, see? Yes, Jesus has been talking about AD 70. As a matter of fact, in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30 and 31, he talked about his coming. He talked about his coming on the clouds of heaven. Coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Coming with the angels. Coming with a shout. Coming with the trumpet to gather the elect." But all of that, you see, commentator after commentator after commentator admits this is typical prophetic language, taken from the Old Testament, to speak of a traumatic, world-changing event in which God would judge one nation by using his sovereign authority to bring another nation in judgment of this nation. And when he used his sovereign authority in that manner, he was said to come. The day of the Lord, in other words, was a historical event. Never an end of history event. You know, by the way, I absolutely love Ezekiel 13, verse 5 and 6. The Lord speaking about the false prophets. Ezekiel 13 is a powerful passage on that. But in Ezekiel chapter 13, the Lord castigates the false prophets. He says, "You're like a bunch of foxes in the wilderness." And he said, "You just go around talking all these words when you ought to be preparing and reinforcing the walls of Jerusalem to prepare for the day of the Lord." Wait a minute. you should be reinforcing the walls of Jerusalem to prepare for the day of the Lord. Well, if the day of the Lord is an earth-burning, time-ending, cosmos-destroying event, do you think it would do a whole lot of good to reinforce the walls of Jerusalem? Houston, I think we've got a problem here. Folks, it's failure to understand the apocalyptic form and nature of the day of the Lord. And so post-millennialists, many amillennialists say, well, you're exactly right, Preston. In the Old Testament, you have the historical day of the Lord. However, although Matthew chapter 24 is the coming of the Lord on the clouds with a shout, with the trumpet, in power and great glory, to gather together the elect, that coming was typological. It points to the real coming of the Lord. I've been asking people on Facebook, YouTube, show me one verse that says, hints, implies, indicates, and demands that AD 70 was a type and a foreshadowing of anything else. I wrote a book on this, AD 70, a shadow of the, quote, real, unquote, end, question mark. Do yourself a favor. Get a copy of that book at my website, donkpreston.com or BibleProphecy.com. I adduced 15 facts, 15 New Testament facts that completely destroy the claim that AD 70 was a type or a shadow of anything else that was coming. It's simply false, ladies and gentlemen, to claim that AD 70 looked forward to something else, something greater. It's not a tenable, defensible argument. So once again, here we are told that the language of Matthew chapter 24, verse 36 demands a change in subject. And it's based upon the Greek term peride. We would spell that Peride. And so it is translated commonly, most commonly, as but. And so we're told this is contrastive. Jesus is now contrasting what he is about to say with what he has already said. Now, first of all, let's just think in good old common sense, shall we? Tragically, an awful lot of people don't use a whole lot of that when they come to the Bible study and Bible interpretation. They allow their traditions, their prejudices, their pride, and whatever the preacher says to influence and to overrule common sense. But we are told Matthew 24:36 is a direct, sharp contrast between the previous discussion and what follows. Well, we are told, you see, Jesus had told them when the fall of Jerusalem would be. Matthew 24, verse 36. Verily I say unto you, this generation will by no means pass until all of these things are fulfilled. And so we're told, see, the apostles knew when the coming of the Lord, or when the fall of Jerusalem would be. It would be in that generation. Well, just hold on. As my wife sometimes says, when I get in a hurry to do something, to go somewhere, whatever, she'll say, well, just hold on, Turbo. Kind of slow me down. I had a doctor ask me just the other day, she says, you're kind of a type A personality, aren't you? I said, no, I'm a double A personality. I like to be busy. I like to do stuff. All right. So, does the fact that Jesus said they could know that the fall of Jerusalem was going to be in that generation mean that he could not say, but of that day and hour? No man knows. Little common sense here, folks. Let's just say, my best friend here in town, he and I like to go to swap meets, automotive swap meets together. So I call him up every once in a while, and I'll say, hey, Mike, going to be a huge swap meet down in Texas or Chickasha or Decatur, whatever. Do you want to go? And he'll say, well, I'd love to go, Don, but I don't know what day it will be. Now, let me ask you a question. Does he know it's going to be in our lifetime, this generation? Sure. But insofar as his knowledge of when he can go, he doesn't. Now, in this specific illustration, obviously, I know the dates, the day and the hour, so to speak, of, the swap meet. However, if I call my buddy up and I say, hey, Mike, let's go fishing in the spring. And he goes, absolutely fantastic. We've been wanting to do that for a long time. Or another thing that we've been intending to do for the last couple of years, there's a fantastic go-kart track north of us in Norman, Oklahoma. And every time that we drive by there, we go, we got to go there. Let's go there. Let's go there. Let's go there in the spring. Okay, what day? Don't know. Will it be in our generation? Of course. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's something that you have to catch. And I may have to continue this tomorrow, okay? But in Zechariah chapter 14, what do we have? We have a prediction of the coming of the Lord with all of his saints. That's Matthew chapter 24, verse 30 and 31. That's 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 13. That's 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. So Zechariah chapter 14 is a prediction of the coming of the Lord. I should mention in this juncture that throughout church history, major commentators have acknowledged, agreed, and taught that Zechariah 14 was a prophecy of AD 70. I'm not saying all of them did, but some of the most prominent commentators through history have agreed that Zechariah 14 was a prophecy of AD 70. So we have a prediction of the coming of the Lord with all of his saints. And it's the time of the destruction of Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the women ravaged, its inhabitants taken off into captivity. Coming the Lord, destruction of Jerusalem. And it shall be a day. What shall be a day? Coming the Lord, destruction of Jerusalem. It shall be a day known only to the Lord. What? And by the way, you need to know this. Jesus constantly drew from Zechariah. His entry into Jerusalem riding on a donkey, from Zechariah. Many, look, and again, commentators have recognized this for many years, that Zechariah, in addition to Deuteronomy 32, was normative. It was paradigmatic for Jesus, especially during his passion. They shall weigh up for me 30 pieces of silver. Zechariah chapter 11. In that day, they shall mourn for the Son of Man, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn because of him. Zechariah 12, verse 10, Matthew chapter 24, verse 30. You see what I mean? So here is Zechariah chapter 14 predicting the coming of the Lord at the fall of Jerusalem, and says it would be a time known only to the Lord. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, Jesus is virtually quoting Zechariah 14, I believe it's verse 8. So if Jesus is, as many commentators understand, if Jesus is citing, echoing Zechariah 14 in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, then since Zechariah chapter 14 put the coming of the Lord with all of his saints at the time of the fall of Jerusalem as a time known only to the Lord, guess what? That means in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, Jesus was directly echoing Zechariah 14, and that means that Matthew chapter 24, verse 36 is simply Jesus saying, of the specific day and hour concerning my coming at the fall of Jerusalem, my coming with all of my saints, with the angels, is going to be in his generation. Now, I said I was going to get into the linguistics today concerning peri day. Sorry about that. Got carried away with Zechariah 14 because it's such an incredible, powerful, and definitive commentary on Matthew chapter 24, verse 36. So, in the meantime, listen, I am continuing my great introductory special of my brand new book, Resurrection Feast Fulfilled, okay? And instead of paying $34, total delivered price $22.95 for the rest of December 2023, U.S. orders only. So go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, and by the way, thank you again for so many of you purchasing the book, okay? Great introductory. So go to my website, order the book. You'll be absolutely thrilled that you did. I'm starting to get some wonderful, wonderful feedback from those who have been reading it. Okay, tomorrow, on the flip side, we'll be talking about, but of that day and hour, and you do not want to miss this. So I'll see you there.